So if we can have everybody spread out, if you can spread out back farther, I'll come to the front here. I'm gonna take off my mask so you can hear me. So what we're gonna do is we actually can have more than 10 people as long as it's not cohorts of more than 10. So if everybody can maintain 6 feet distance at least, and we're gonna be pretty, you know, like here we have more than 6 feet. Let's say that's the minimum, like 10 probably, or 8, so that there's no question. I think we're okay. I know we're okay. Not I think we're okay. If you came here with somebody, you can obviously, with your wife or whoever else, you can be together, and that's one cohort. If you came with 5 people, you can be together. If you came in the same car, those types of things. But if you're all coming here to meet here, we need to maintain this distance the entire time. And because of that, it's going to be hard for me to lead a tour. It's going to be really hard to lead a tour. So it's going to be impossible to lead a tour. So what I've done is I'm going to go over the information. I'm going to give you guys plenty of time to ask questions. I'll try to answer those for you. And then I've set up some of the drawings that Toru Tanaka has done throughout the garden in places generally where those specific features are going to be. And we can walk around after this and we can try to answer questions if possible. But we do need to maintain that distance even afterwards, so we can't have everybody just kind of swarm all together and go up through the garden. We do have another group coming in at 2, so we have to be finished here at 2. So I'll try to make sure I'm finished talking by 1:30. You can be walking through the garden while I'm talking down here to them, but I want to give you enough time to answer questions so I can answer your questions. And so we'll try to get through the meat of this pretty quickly. Okay? Is everybody comfortable with that? Does anybody have any issues with that? Are you is that okay? Okay. Is that okay over here? All right. Okay. So my name is Michael Black. I'm the Parks Director, and if you've come to these before, you've seen me before. Toru Tanaka is the designer. He's not here today. I decided to do this presentation just as an administrative presentation to let you all know what's going on, when we're going to start, how long it's going to take, what the impact is going to be to the park, and to answer questions that I know are on people's minds because we've heard questions. What about the budget? What about the ongoing maintenance? What about the Doug fir trees? What about, you know, those types of questions? I'm going to try to answer those for you. If I don't get to your question with my presentation, please ask it, and I'll try to answer it. So we do have the COVID restrictions. I want to welcome a few people here. So John Sullivan is here from my office, and he's helping me out with this, getting this organized and everything, and he's been a big help in getting the whole garden going. Mike Gardner is here from the Ashland Parks Commission, elected Parks Commissioner. We got Tom Foster here, who leads walks in the park, and a few other people. Andy, you want to?
Andy Stallman.
Andy Stallman.
I'm chair of the Public Arts Commission.
Okay. And then do we have any other people here from other commissions, committees, councils, or anything in the city who I don't recognize? Okay, great. Well, welcome to all of you. You're all important, and we're looking forward to having this presentation because this is kind of the kickoff presentation. We've had several of these over 3 or 4 years, right? We've talked about a lot of different things. As some of you know and have followed it, we started out with a general design with specific parts. That some of those specific parts have changed, but the general design of the garden is still the same. And you can come up here and you can look at these plans when you get a chance after I'm done, and look at the drawings as you're going through, and you can see that mostly the garden is about the same as the way it was designed originally, with some minor changes or major changes depending on how you look at it. So I'm going to go over a little bit of the history just really quick, the fact that this is approved, and I'll talk about the approval process and what happened with the approval of the plan and where we are now. We'll talk about the plan just a little bit more, about some of the details. Then we'll talk about the timeline and the park impacts, because there's definitely going to be an impact and there's going to be a timeline. The timeline is is big. As a lot of you know, it's like 2 years that we're looking at for this. So we'll talk about that and how that's going to impact the park for a couple of years. And then we'll have time for questions, then we'll go on a tour. All right. So to talk about the history really quick, most of you know this. The Japanese garden was designed early in the 1900s by John McLaren. John McLaren did the design for the big park. I don't think they even had all the acreage at the time, but he did the big park design. One of the very specific things that he did, like the fountain and the band shell and designing, was this garden. So this garden was included in the design right from the beginning. And in fact, if you look at the designs, and I can show you if we get a chance one-on-one later on, if you look at the design from John McLaren and you zoom down into the garden, which is just a small piece of this big, huge design, the garden actually is organized very similar to the way it's organized right now. And in fact, in the early 1900s, about, right off the bat, 1915, the site was identified for the garden. And in 1916 to 1918, just right after the entire park opened, 1916 on July 4th was the opening day of Lithia Park. And right then, and right for the next few years, this garden was being designed. And through that design, they started with the paths that went in, and then they had the rock, a lot of the rocks that came in. The water course came in, a small tea house came in, but not all the vegetation that we see now. That came over time, and not much of the vegetation that's here now went in 1916. However, there is some here that was here in 1916. So there was a period from 1916 when the garden started, let's say 1918 when it was finished, until about 1950, so let's say about 32 years, where the garden just kind of was the garden, and not a lot of improvements happened to it. The tea house moved from one location to another. There was vegetation that grew, but over time, after 32 years, Chet Corey came on the scene, and Chet Corey actually noticed that there needed to be some changes happen to the garden. It had been 32 years, and the garden needed to be regenerated, which is the term that we've been using lately, is the regeneration of the garden. So Chet Corey put a lot into the garden, did some redesign. The basic shape of the garden stayed the same. If it was the same in 1916 and it is now, you can tell that it stayed the same. But it stayed the same, but he had added many features, more vegetation, some more trees and things like that. But still, not everything that you see now. It wasn't for another 33 years until around 1983 when there was another movement to raise money to help regenerate the garden again, and Don Todt was involved in that at that point in time. And some of you remember Don Todt. And he was able to raise some money, and it wasn't even that much money actually. You see if it's in here. It was about $6,000 that he raised. But Don, through his connections, he was able to leverage his connections and the people he knew throughout the state, and he was able to get all the maples that we see in here now into here, and was able to plant the garden and make it look like what we're used to now. And over time, little things were added here and there. There were small changes made, but mostly to the vegetation. The basic design of the garden stayed the same. But after another 33 years, Don Todt came in, and there was another need for regeneration. So now, if you go from 1983 to now, 2020, that's about 37 years. 2020, 2021 time frame, it's about 37 years, and you can see it's about following the same pattern, where it's about in 35 years there needs to be some regeneration done to the garden. And what I'm telling you right there is to emphasize the need for the regeneration. I think a lot of us will walk through the garden today, and I was talking to somebody earlier on who was visiting from out of town, and they were saying, "Oh, it just looks so beautiful right now," and you're really gonna regenerate it or redo it right now. It just looks so beautiful, and it's true. It does look beautiful right now, and walking through it today, it's probably one of the best times you're going to walk through it at this time of the year. But if you look really close, as we have with the arborists and with our designer and the other people, there are trees in there that are struggling. There are many trees in there that the roots have been exposed for a long period of time and people have been walking over top of them. There are trees that probably aren't going to last the next 5 years. There's trees you can see right now that might not be here next year. But it's time for some regeneration. And I'm not saying every tree in here is bad. We're not going to take out every tree in here, but it's time for some regeneration. And I share that with you to show that it's kind of along the time frame that the garden generally regenerates, since we have that 100-year history with the garden. So October of 2019, a year ago, it was actually October 28th, so just a year and a few days ago, the Parks Commissioners approved a Japanese garden plan. And if you recall, they approved a plan previously, but it had included taking out 2 Doug firs that were right here, these 2 right here. And I won't go into a lot of detail on that, but obviously that was a matter of concern for a lot of people. So we re-looked at it, and after looking at it for a while, we came back in October with a redesigned plan that incorporates the 2 Douglas firs into the plan. And this is the plan here, actually. So if you look in this area when you get a chance to come up here,